Hi everyone, this is Linda Bennett, your spiritual counselor and psychic coach for Metaphysically Speaking. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Blog Talk Radio, and a wonderful station in Sarasota that carries our radio show. So we have the most recent TV show that I did up on our website, which is metaspeak.com. And you will go and find it. Plus, you'll find our recommended sponsors who have been with me for years and are fabulous people. I don't recommend people I don't know, by the way. I only recommend people I use their services, whether it's my fabulous vet. And before we get to Halloween, I'm going to read something for you because, you know, I love all animals, but I'm not a dog fan, but they all love me and they slobber all over me and they trip me when I go to the vet center, and because I do volunteer work there, and so the little beasts are just great. But nevertheless, everybody forgets pussycats because dogs bark and they make a big fuss, but pussycats are quiet and peaceful. Guess what I love? If you've seen the website with my pussycats, then you'll know who I have in my life. But there is a great deal of concern in the veterinary community that cats do not get enough veterinary care. And that is for two reasons. Number one, dogs bark and they make a project if they don't feel well. Sort of possibly, this is a controversial statement, like men.
Oh.
But they don't want to go to the doctor. But you have to haul their little tushes off to the doctor. Females are more like cats. They are more feline. And cats are trained because they are solitary animals, except for African lions. They are by themselves. So if they show any kind of illness or a limp, they're immediately attacked by predators. So you will have a sick cat, and before you know it, the cat is now drooling or foaming at the mouth or falling down, and you had no idea the cat was sick. So the veterinary community is concerned because cats do not get enough veterinary care. They don't get brought in yearly for dentals because anything with teeth needs dental cleaning. And Angel, who was the black and white kitty, and Sweetie Pie, who was the tortoiseshell on my pictures there, both had terrible dental problems. Sweetie Pie wound up with 3 teeth. Angel wound up with 2. And that's because they never had, Sweetie Pie didn't have proper nutrition. She was dumped over a fence at a wildlife rehab center that I used to work at. And Angel I adopted from someone who never took her to the vet.
Well, hi, this is Shawnee, Linda's
My executive producer.
But let's also explain that the cats were elderly at that stage also.
Well, no, Sweetie Pie was just 4 weeks old.
When
she was dumped over the fence,
right,
and I took her when she was 6.
The teeth.
Yeah, and then Angel was 12 and a half when I got her. And her teeth were so frightening. Her breath was horrific. And as soon as Dr. Joel Murphy at Animal and Bird Medical Center cleaned out all the bad teeth, oh, she could eat, she was happy, she was smiling. Just like you have a toothache, your pets have a toothache. So I'm going to read you a list of the 4 critical must-have shots for all your pets. And rabies is the first one for dogs, for cats, for if you have pet skunks, which I don't recommend, but people think they're cute. I think bunnies may need rabies shots too. I'm not sure, but you check with your vet. If you don't have a full-service vet, in other words, if the vet just does spay and neuter, get a new vet. You want the distemper shot. You want the rabies shot. You want the feline calcivirus shot. And you want the phenorhinotracheitis shot, which is FHV, which is severe upper respiratory distress. And those are must-haves. Others are chlamydia, FIP, which is feline infectious peritonitis, feline immunodeficiency, which is feline AIDS, virulent systemic calcivirus, and bordetella. Now, if you have a well-rounded, well-educated vet, this will all be explained to you, and you do not need the yearly rabies shot. My vet and all the vets I know who are really good vets recommend the 3-year shot. And they do something called titers, which are also done on humans. They check your blood system and see how much of the vaccination is still active in your system. You may not need, say, the feline distemper for another 6 months. So your vet will work with you and make sure that your cat does not get overloaded with vaccines. But vaccines are critical. And if you say I have an indoor cat, that's great, but they can you know, you can have a friend come in whose cat is sick, and your cat will catch the germs from your friend. So you want to protect your kitties. You want to make sure that you bring your kitties in twice a year at least for complete checkups. And you're going to say, well, it's too expensive. Well, then don't get a cat. Don't get a dog. Your cats and dogs need just as much medical preventative care as you do. And if you take care of your cat will live for 20 years. When Angel crossed over on January 2nd, she was 19 and a half years old. And that, especially for a cat that was in bad health when I got her, is a credit to my vet and to me. This little gracious Gracie here was heading on in. We have to apologize for the TV show because we thought she was in the shot. And all you could see was the tablecloth moving underneath, like I had Casper the Friendly Ghost little cousin under there.
It was like a moment of an SNL skit.
And then the plant came crashing down because she decided to jump into that to get attention.
My blood pressure was really high that day.
So was mine.
Yeah.
And
but you're so calm through the whole thing.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 100 years, so what the heck. And I just kept right on with the show, and then of course I had to mention her because we thought she was in the shot. Well,
right.
In the next TV show we're going to do, which is going to be the Christmas show, I will have her up on the table with me so everybody can see her with her little bow on her head or her little Santa hat, and make sure that she is well seen, and then hopefully she'll get bored and go away. So if you have a cat or a dog, you want to make sure that you have a full service vet. If you want a recommendation, you can call Animal and Bird Medical Center of Palm Harbor, which is 727-784-0558. Tell them Linda sent you. He has people from all over, especially since he's one of the few avian approved vets. That's if you're going to spend $10,000.
That's birds.
That's birds. If you're going to spend $10,000 on a bird, he doesn't want you giving it bird seed because it's going to die. He has himself been to the Amazon and observed the birds. I can't tell you how many trips to the Amazon he has had. So he knows about parrots, about birds, anything there is to know. He has written 4 books on avian specialties, avian diets. People from all over the world call him for consultations. You can find out what his fee is, because I don't know what the fee is, but the clinic will tell you. And they are full service. If you don't have a full service vet, get one, and he can recommend one in your area.
There's one other thing. I know we're going to move on, but when you go to your vet and you have them do the dental, make sure the anesthesia is the kind the kitty cat or the puppy dog breathes in, not the IV.
Right, because the IV doesn't take them down completely.
Well, also, I swear...
And they'll be in agony.
Also, I swear my kitty cat Sweetness from years ago, I feel like it took years off her life because she one time had the anesthesia and it took her so long to recover. You mean
in the arm? The IV?
Yeah, sorry. It took her so long to recover.
Yeah.
Like in that day, and I just felt like it weakened her whole system.
Yeah, it did, and Sweetness never really quite snapped out of it.
Yeah, so.
And the other thing is, our vet uses people anesthesia, which is much healthier. If you got $50 charge for your spay and neuter, they're using the old-fashioned animal anesthesia, which kills them. So it's more expensive, but you're going to have a healthy cat or dog. And they can keep them under as long as they're necessary for the surgery. So that is my word on this. Take care of your cat as well as your dog. Now, we're going to talk about Halloween because the season is here. And in the ancient cultures, it was called Samhain, Samhain, and the Druids, and I'm not talking about the modern Druids, which are like 1,000 years old. I'm talking about thousands of years ago. When we knew Atlantis was going down, we were aware of the different communities around the world that had more spiritual enlightenment, and that's where we sent people. And naturally, the Celtic area was one of them. They have discovered within the last year and a half that a great deal of Ireland is underwater. And guess what? It seems to be rising. Why is that? Earthquakes. So what is up must come down, what is down must go up, etc. So Ireland once upon a time was much larger. It was also probably attached to England. We're talking about the Druids of thousands and thousands of years ago, who were the priests and priestesses that took care of the spirituality of Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, part of the Norway and Sweden and Denmark, Germany, parts of Poland, France, upper parts of Italy, where the Basques are also from Atlantis. They speak a language like no other on the planet. They have different cultures. They have a different secret spirituality. So that's why they want to be separated from Spain. And it was considered that was the Celtic area that the Druids oversaw. In Druid ceremonies, both men and women celebrated the particular event that they were celebrating at that time. There are 4 astronomical / astrological events, which are the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes. And for the astronomical, which is what they were led by male priests assisted by a female high priestess. And the celebratory, which is February 1st and 7, which is Imbolc, which was considered the first snowdrop. We have like the January thaw up north at home when the builders quick put the foundations in so they can keep their people busy throughout the spring. And sometimes it happens in February, but the spring drop, and also new lambs are often born at that particular time. So it's considered a time of hope from coming through the harsh winter. Yes, it would snow again, but it was the January thaw kind of concept where you got a chance to see what life will be like in the spring. Then you have Beltane, which is the beginning of May, and that was a celebration of fertility. Couples would try each other out for a year before they got married, because marriage was considered very, very serious. It was not to be entered into lightly. And there was, sadly, for those of us, those people today who are busy being married and they're the same sex, there was no homosexual marriage. Because marriage is the complete blending of the male-female energy of God. Yeah, just a little malfunction. We can't even blame it on Gracie.
I know, the cat.
Yeah, so anyway, so Beltane was a time that couples selected each other, and they could live with each other for a year or less if it really wasn't working out. But it was declared to the community that these people were, this man and this woman were choosing each other as a pre-marriage situation where they moved in, they set up housekeeping, etc. The next one was called Lugendash, and that was August 1st and 2nd, which was also the first harvest of early vegetables and grains and whatever. The next one was Halloween, which was the end of the old year, so it's like our New Year's Eve and the beginning of the new year. Those celebrations were led by a female high priestess assisted by a male high priest. This was exactly what Jesus did, and why Jesus and Mary and Joseph of Arimathea and the whole gang came back, and we're going to be covering that in the Christmas show. I know some of you are tired of me stressing it, but people think Jesus died for our sins, which is a very good question that many Christians have, and the robotic answer, Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, makes me want to throw up, because Jesus is not the only one, and his name wasn't Jesus, it was Yeshua. And if you ever go to Puerto Rico or you go to Mexico, every other guy is named Jesus.
Or Jesus.
Or Jesus, right.
So let me just say this, because some people are listening and they don't know you.
They don't know me.
I know, it's so odd.
So go on the website and you'll discover me.
Metaspeak.com. Short for Metaphysically Speaking. And she's on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Blog Talk Radio. Sorry, sometimes I just have to shamelessly promote. It's in my DNA.
You have a marketing degree, so...
So, Linda, if someone heard you say that about Jesus or Jesus, they might think that you don't like him.
I adore Jesus.
Thank you.
You know, Karen, who's one of my students, just noticed when she came out of the guest bathroom, she looked up at the wall and she saw this probably 24-inch high oval replica of a... what is it called? Relief from one of the basilicas in Rome of Mary holding the baby Jesus surrounded by little cherubs. She said, when did you get that? I said, years ago. She says, I never saw that. So I love all of the aspects of God. That is what being a yogi means, which is what I am. Yoga means yoke to God.
Or union.
Or right? Union with God. And we are all at union with God because we're all part of the God force. Like a giant wad of chewing gum, I always say, we're stretched out, and the object of continuous life is to go back home again. So you can't be separated from God unless you're so demonic, which is another part of what we'll talk about today, that you get so vile and vomitous and so ungodlike, and you don't want another chance, that you get separated out and your soul gets destroyed and converted to another type of energy. But that is not common.
And you were raised Catholic, just to be
I
clear
was raised
also.
Catholic, fought with the nuns and priests at 7 years old for my communion, which I did not want to receive because I didn't believe in Catholicism, because they taught that you had to be Catholic to go to heaven, which of course is nonsense. And that if you were going to receive, if you before you receive communion, you had to acknowledge Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. I said, what about Buddha? And so I was constantly getting to sent Father Burns, who would just turn absolutely purple. And years later, I said to my father one day as he's purple up on the altar screaming about something, I said, Daddy, that's how he's going to die. His head's going to rupture. Well, he wound up with a brain hemorrhage. That's how he died.
Because you're naturally psychic.
Because I am naturally psychic. And for
said
those
that at
of
the
you who
beginning
want
of the show.
consultations, I do limited phone consultations. I've been doing this for the last 100 years. And what you do here, the fee is $150. You send in your pictures to the address at the website and your list of questions and your check, and therefore I will review it. If I don't feel I can help you, which is not usual, but there are people I can't help, and I try to refer them to therapists in their area, I will do a phone consultation for you. It's a 1-hour consultation. This is not 1-800-PSYCHIC where you get charged $3 a minute. I've been doing this for years and years and years. I work with people in other countries. I will do this until 2 o'clock in the morning if you're in another country. I've worked with people in Australia. I work with people all over the world. So if you have personal questions and personal issues, life issues, spiritual questions, whatever you have, whatever you would go to a counselor for. And I think one of the highest compliments I ever got was from a man who'd been in therapy for 20 years. And he said, Linda, 1 hour with you is like 20 years with my therapist, which was really very touching. I started to cry. So we're going to come back with more Samhain, more Halloween, and we're going to take a break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back with you. Hey everyone, it's Linda Bennett back with you with Metaphysically Speaking. I'm your spiritual counselor and psychic host and creator of Metaphysically Speaking. By the way, Metaphysically Speaking is trademarked. If you ever see anybody else using it, please notify us by email, and we will have our attorney contact them, because it's well known by this point in the metaphysical community and on all of the different websites that Metaphysically Speaking is trademarked. In everything except rocket ships and sneakers, I guess, because you have to trademark in every single possible category. But I want to get back to Halloween. So all of that Celtic area was considered that the spiritual teachers were the Druids. They did not then draw blood. I'm going to say this 1,000 times, and I don't care who I offend. The minute you draw blood, that is now black magic, whether or not you intend it to be. When people draw blood, it's a reflection of the fact that they've lost the power of spirituality and are now going to any measure to try to retain power. God is a universal life force. And you say, well, people die. Well, the body dies just like you take off your clothes. You can't wear the same clothes your whole life unless you're Dobby and Harry Potter. You change clothes or lifetime so that you continue your learning process. Your soul doesn't die. But people get lazy and they forget and they get tired and they want to take a shortcut. That's human nature, sadly. You don't kill roosters, you don't kill goats, you don't kill cattle, you don't kill anything for God. You pick flowers, you present a crystal, you present fruit, anything that is replenishable. You don't kill animals. So it was male-female energy with the Druids, just like with Jesus. What's the connection? You'll find out on our Christmas show, which I know I've covered before. But the new year, which is Halloween, and the old year, which is Halloween, that was the third harvest. The first harvest was August 1st and 2nd. The second is the equinox. And the third is Halloween. They were the late crops. And every community that relies upon food crops, whether you're an independent farmer or whether you're in another country, you're very grateful when you get a good crop, because you have to live on that crop over the winter and through the spring until the new crops come along. So they were busy celebrating. The other thing they were celebrating is that they understood that at that time of year, the veil, to use the expression, or the energy between the physical world, Earth, and the astral world, which we have such good questions from Nancy and from Kristen, which I'll be getting to, was very thin. So it was easier to talk to your relatives. It was easier for them to come through and talk to you.
Is that All Saints Day?
Well, we had the Catholics come along, and they tried to commandeer the old celebrations. Well, you can hardly commandeer the equinoxes and the solstices, because all you have to do is look up in the sky and realize that, hey, they really do exist. But just like the Jews, the Islamics built on the Jewish site, then the Jews built on Islamic sites, and the Catholics built on other sites, and the Catholics built on every single Mayan and Druid, Native American site they could find to blot it out. Because people were used to going down 3 blocks and make a right, and so that's where they put their churches. Many Catholic churches throughout Europe are on ancient Druid sites. So it was considered then that the veil between heaven and earth was thinner, and you could talk to your relatives. But they also realized that it was easier for negative spirits to come through, and they didn't want to be recognized, so they started wearing costumes. Now the Celts, if you know anything about the Celts and the Celt warriors, would paint their faces. So did the Native Americans in this country and in Canada and in Central and South America, as a disguise, as a preparation. If you're a concert pianist, you don't just walk over and sit at the piano, you practice all afternoon. So this was part of the preparation and part of the psyching up of your defending your territory, whatever you're going to do. And so therefore, they would take fox skins, and even though I'm a vegetarian, if you live in an area where there are not a lot of vegetables growing and you want to survive and you choose to survive that way, you will eat animals, which will also give respect. The Native Americans are very famous for that, for giving respect and gratitude to the animal who has given its life for the meal and for the perpetuation of the tribe. So they would put rabbit skins, they would put fox faces, they would do everything. And then they paint their faces so that the evil spirits wouldn't recognize them and follow them home. Which can happen, but doesn't happen often, and I'll explain that later, hopefully. We'll get to that in the next show. My cat is trying to push me out of my own chair, by the way, right now. So if my voice varies, it's because she's pushing me. So you're saying to yourself, well, wait a minute, how did the Pope come to be in Ireland, and what's the whole deal there, and what's with St. Patrick? In 1172, Pope Alexander III, that's the Catholic Pope, gave the country of Ireland, which is so enraging to me. Who the heck did he think he was? Gave the country of Ireland to the English King Henry II to rid the land of heathens and to convert them into good Catholics. St. Patrick driving out the snakes is horsepucky, because there weren't any snakes on Ireland. It was an island. Snakes had disappeared thousands of years earlier. What that's talking about is the caduceus, which is the medical symbol of a snake going clockwise up a staff and going counterclockwise up a staff. St. Patrick with his staff going through Ireland chasing out the snakes is berserk. Never happened. Was he taken prisoner as a slave? Yes, he came back. Who cares? He brought more Catholicism by eradicating the sites, by terrifying the people, thinking that they had been worshiping false gods when they'd been doing so very contentedly, because there's actually only one God energy, one giant wad of chewing gum. And he was driving out the spirituality of the Irish people. The clockwise snake is the male energy. The counterclockwise snake is the female energy going up and down the spine. That's what the caduceus means. I take umbrage with the ambulances and the people who just have one snake, because they're only healing in one way. They don't understand that they're bastardizing the tremendous importance of the caduceus. So the clockwise snake is the male aspect, the counterclockwise is the female aspect. That is the symbolism used for St. Patrick. Because all of us who are part Irish or have relatives there, have already studied anything about Ireland, know there were no snakes. So the Pope, Alexander III, in 1172, gave the country of Ireland to the English King Henry II. To me, that's incredible audacity, how other countries allowed it to happen. But there wasn't CNN in those days. We didn't have the internet. Other countries didn't notice. And they were so busy trying to hang on to their own power that they didn't care. So the Catholic Church began to try to demonize Halloween and say it was evil, they were bringing through evil spirits. Well, that was what they were trying not to do with their types of costumes and with their prayers and their celebrations. And they would light the fire for the Halloween celebration for the end of the old year. They would extinguish it, and then when the new year came, between 9 p.m. and 12 midnight, they would light a new fresh fire to celebrate the new year. They also had a giant vine wheel that they created, covered it with flowers, covered it with some fruits, started it on fire and rolled it down the hill at the end of the season to show that that was the past and now we're starting brand new. So the Catholics created All Souls Day and All Saints Day to try to commandeer the celebration of the ancient Celtic festival. I saw on the History Channel, and you guys need to watch regularly, the History and History International channel, there was a story on how costumes that are used today started in this country. There was a woman named Mrs. Krebs in Kansas. And every Halloween that came along, she discovered that there were some hooligans, as they used to call them, or thugs, who would tear down her beautiful fence and her beautiful garden, and other neighbors' gardens and fences. So she came up with the idea of giving candy to children when they came to her house, and she thought that would stop it. That didn't stop it, so she created a Halloween party downtown. That didn't stop it, so she created a Halloween party the following year and said, everybody dress up in a costume. We'll all have fun. That stopped the vandalism. Either that or all the kids were killed off or died throughout that year. We're busy destroying the community. But that's how costumes became popular in this country, because people were not going to put fox heads on and bunny rabbits. But that's how they took costume ideas from literature, from Charles Dickens, and this was back in the 1800s. So, which I thought was fascinating. So credit Mrs. Krebs, whose family I'm sure is not getting any kind of financial remuneration from the costume industry, but that is interesting how that came to be in this country. It's the most sacred of all the celebrations for the Druids, because they were thanking God for the final harvest. They were thanking God for the opportunity to, and all the gods and goddesses, for the opportunity to speak to their relatives, know their relatives are okay, get the criticism or what you're doing right or wrong from the relatives, and find out what they needed to do better. Did they need to plant the crops a day earlier? Did they need to take better care of their children? Did they have any health problems? What was the deal? And then they spent the next day quietly and peacefully in contemplation and in celebration that they had enough food to last throughout the winter. So that's what Halloween is all about. It's pronounced differently in different countries, and we came in this country to be calling it Halloween, when that's not what it was called. It was called Samhain, Samhain, and all different variations. Okay, so you should have no fear of celebrating Halloween. One thing that gripes me is Hollywood, which has taken the opportunity to glorify with these awful chainsaw movies, these horrible death movies, horrible spirit vampire, what are those Walking Dead people, all this garbage. Zombies, right. Notice I don't watch the shows. I do watch True Blood. I think it lost itself a little bit last year. I'm interested in seeing what they do this year. But they always have some kind of spiritual content and political content, which I think is a very intelligent show. And that's on HBO.
But you're not a fan of the Dracula part.
I don't like... Look, Dracula was a prince, King Dracul, and means dragon. Dragons throughout history have been powerful and very important. If I get a chance, I'll tell you about a dream, and then I'll report to you on a medical progress that I am making with my dream. And when the Islamics were coming to take over his country, he had his troops kill off the first invasion of soldiers, put stakes in the ground, chop off their heads, and he mounted their heads on the stakes. Which seems a horrific type of warmongering, but nevertheless, when the Mongols came, when the Islamics came for the second wave, they were so astonished and revolted and couldn't understand how many soldiers they had in this small country that they turned around and did not invade the Transylvania, Romania area. And so he was considered a hero by his villagers. Whether or not he took baths in blood of his enemies, we have no idea. Everybody who's been there has said it's got a really creepy energy. So the chances are he did develop a cruel streak. And that's what's haunting the area now. Animals, by the way, do not frequent the castle. They don't go near the castle. The wolves avoid it. There's like this margin around the property that they don't cross over. What does that tell you? Yes, there are negative spirits there. So when you're talking about Halloween, it's a celebration, it's a reverent holiday, and it's a time for people to celebrate death and life. And remember, I don't care who you are, there's no such thing as death. And we had a question from a girl named Nancy, who, bless her little heart, came up with some fabulous questions. She also was raised Catholic. I don't know if she fought with the nuns and priests the way I did. But when I got home that first day, at 7 years old, studying for communion and arguing with the nuns and Father Burns, my parents were waiting for me. And they wanted to know where I got all this stuff. The same questions that he asked me. How did I know about reincarnation? Blah, blah, blah. I said, well, everybody knows about reincarnation. It's just part of your life. It's part of who you are. So she wanted to know if negative spirits, what about showing these horrible Halloween movies on your television or going to a movie theater and cutting home, could a negative spirit follow you? Possibly, but you have to be karmically open. Karma is the law of cause and effect. In science, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. You have to be karmically open to be haunted or irritated by negative spirits. How does that happen? Did you practice black magic in college? Did you think it was cute to do that? Did you fool around a lot with the Ouija board and let negative spirits in? In other lifetimes, did you practice black magic? That means trying to take power over people, trying to take power that is not yours, killing things, especially animals. That also includes, by the way, people who are in dog fights. They are committing black magic by torturing animals. So therefore, there might be something that follows you in a car behind you or follows you zipping along, but it cannot come into your energy zone. It can't come into your car, can't come into your house. It has to stay outside in the street and make funny faces. So when we come back from our break, we are going to be continuing with that and continuing with some of your excellent questions. And this is Linda Bennett, your psychic and spiritual teacher for Metaphysically Speaking. And this is Linda Bennett, back with more Metaphysically Speaking. And again, Nancy's question was, can these spirits follow you home? My answer is no, not unless they are attracted to you. And they can get attracted to negative people, but they also get attracted to very powerful spiritual people. Whether you realize it or not, you're a spark of the divine. That is your origin. That will be your return home. I presume people listening to the show are spiritual people and not people looking to harm others.
If you're watching a scary movie and then it kind of stays with you and you're creeped out of your mind after the movie.
Which can happen because, especially with the techniques that they use in Hollywood today,
it's terrifying.
Things are absolutely out of control.
So that feeling, you kind of can't shake it off. Does that just mean like you change your central nervous system and you have an adrenaline
made yourself
rush?
Nervous.
Yeah, and you have an adrenaline rush, so
and
you feel
have
different.
An adrenaline drain. Because you're terrified. Even if a demon, and I have twice been confronted by what they would call Satan, not Lucifer, who is an archangel, the bearer of light in charge of Venus, which we can cover at another time, but Satan is different from Lucifer. Satan is the name of the collection of evil energies and evil spirits and the leader of it. But if you let yourself get frightened, and twice, as I started to say, I've had confrontations with Satan. Once when I went over to help a friend during an exorcism, and once when I had repainted my room and set up the altar differently in Connecticut, and I was on the 3rd floor because the back of the house is on the 3rd floor. I may have said this before at another show, sorry. And I turned to look out the window because I felt something creepy out there. And there was the most I've had 3, because when I was a child, when I helped Gerhard, and then. Okay, so 3 confrontations with evil. And it was rising up from the ground and staring at me. I said, you've got one nerve. You're really bugging me. You're really irritating me. Be gone. And don't bother me again. And you don't get terrified. You don't get. First of all, it's startling looking, but I had already seen it twice. But other people haven't seen it twice. It's very startling looking. It's ugly. I didn't smell the smell then, but I smelt it when I was an infant, and I smelt it at Gerhardt's, who was a man who taught me exorcism back in Connecticut. And that's because I was not open karmically to being possessed, so he could teach it to me. I talked about it with one of the monks at Self-Realization a year later, and he said, yes, we gave permission for you to be taught. So your adrenaline drain from seeing something so ugly and so horrific and allowing yourself to be frightened because you inadvertently project yourself into the helpless person in the movie. And you think, what if that happens to me? It can only happen to you if you've done it to others or if you've allowed it to happen. Same thing with sexual abuse. If you've allowed it to happen, it did nothing to interfere. So people say, what's the karma of being sexually abused? Either you did it to someone else or you allowed it to happen, or like neighbors of mine when I was being battered by my mother, never helped me. Never brought it up. I knew they could hear the screams. My friend Joan, 2 houses down, said one time, we can hear you screaming all the way down here. I said, well, why don't one of you pick up the damn phone and call the police on her? No one ever interceded. So what does that mean? Another lifetime, they're going to be subjected to child abuse. They knew a child was being abused. They did absolutely nothing. That's how you incur negative karma. So don't go to see those movies. Don't patronize them. Don't say you love those movies because you're opening yourself up to being desensitized to evil energy, and you may not recognize it in the future. So my advice, don't reward Hollywood for putting on that crap. Just go on your merry way and watch positive things. If you get yourself all psyched out, go take a shower, go put on a happy program or happy music. That doesn't include rap and hip-hop. It means classical, country, and western, as long as they're not lying, sighing, dying, and crying. And some spiritual music.
Or watch a comedy.
Or watch the cartoon channel, or
Right.
watch a comedy, or watch, Everybody Loves Raymond or something. Watch the old Bill Cosby show. I love the Huxtables. And so if you surround yourself with negative energy, you are becoming more and more susceptible to not recognizing it because you're becoming desensitized.
So Nancy has the second half of this question, and she says, when you are when you recognize evil or you sense evil, even if you just like have a creepy feeling and nothing having to do with the movie,
Right.
if
Does praying make it go away?
Yeah.
Not always. And one of the worst prayers I ever heard in my life, and I didn't like as a child, was the Catholic, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord what is it? Now I lay me down to sleep.
Pray the Lord my soul to keep.
If I die before I wake, I pray
yeah.
I pray the Lord my soul to take. What kind of a kid wants to go to bed thinking they're going to die off? And that if they didn't love Jesus, they're going to hell. So I think that's a horrific thing to say. And then, what's the thing on the rock goodbye baby
on
in
the
treetops? If the
bough
breaks,
the cradle will rock or something.
And down will fall. Holy God! No wonder kids have terrible nightmares.
And boogeyman's under the bed and all that.
And all that stuff. So, praying that's a good place to start. But understanding within your very core of your being that you are a spark of God, and evil cannot attach itself to you unless A, it's karmic, but you should still pray anyway, and B, you as a soul on this planet, in a physical body, on a physical planet, have the right to be here. Astral beings do not. The good ones, like your grandmother or something, are allowed to come through because they're helping you. Negative spirits, if you've been negative, are allowed to come through because you've been negative. And this is paying back karma. They're looking to see if they can capture you and suck out the life force and suck out your spirituality because they use it for their own power. They also feed off fear and anger. So all of you who have anger issues or fear issues, you are feeding negativity and draining your own adrenaline, which will make you more tired. It makes you susceptible to body chemistry problems, hormone problems, all kinds of immune system problems, etc. So praying is a good start, but understanding that you have the right to command evil to be abolished. You have the right, as a spark of the divine creator of the universe, to tell it to go away, and mean it, and be confident. And then change the channel and put on something else, and don't even watch that garbage.
But also just in your life, just sort of change the channel
and
of your life.
In your life, if you're surrounded by people who love those movies, there is a problem with them. They are attracted to that kind of horror and terror, and you can get sucked into that. That means you don't. That doesn't mean you don't say hello to them anymore, but you begin to change your friends to more positive people. So, how much more time do we have in this segment?
In this segment, we have about 9 minutes.
Oh, goody. Okay.
So let's get to more of Nancy's questions.
Nancy, bless Kristen. You have the best questions. The reason I don't like the Ouija board is because you cannot control who comes through. It's like an open invitation. You throw the door open to the astral world. Whoever shows up, shows up.
Linda, if someone has other questions for you, they can reach you at metaspeak.com. You can leave your questions there, or email linda@metaspeak.com.
Yes. Put your question there like these girls have done, and we will review them. And if we've covered it 500 times, I will not cover it again, except maybe for a second. And because I know that not all of you have heard all the shows, and more people are tuning into us and finding us. But so enter them there. And if I do a consultation for you and you give me permission to ask a question without using your full name, I'll be happy to use the question on the program. There was a question about, that's going to be involved, so I'll save that for the next show. But dying before your time. There is no such thing as dying before your time. You die when it's appropriate for you to die. And I know I've had 3 miscarriages, and it was heartbreaking. But not every soul is meant to have a full long 60-year life on the planet. Many souls just come through in the uterus to get the experience of being inside of a uterus. Many souls come and take a breath and then cross back over because they needed that experience of being born. Many souls realize what their menu was, their astrological chart was. They were very brave in the astral world to take on that much karma, but then they realized that they probably couldn't fulfill the mission successfully, and then they go back home again. They go back to the astral world. Parents, you have to remember, you didn't create the soul. It's a gift from the universe. It's your karma as well as the soul's karma, the child's karma. Not just you, you're not the only ones involved. So when you spend your lives grieving, you're throwing away the opportunity to be celebrating the fact that you had the chance to bring the soul through for as long as it was here. Some children live to be 5 years old. Some children live to be 9. One of my favorite kids in the world was little Matty Stepanek, who had muscular dystrophy, and he's the one who was on the Oprah show a lot and on different shows and wrote poetry. And that soul, he just glowed. He knew he was only going to be here for a short time, and it was his job to do the very best that he could and brighten other souls. What a little saint. What a little beamlet of light. The other one I love is Malala, who was a child who was shot by the Taliban, who wanted to be a spokesperson for girls' education. Because I was just reading a column written by the man who had first interviewed her 2 years before that happened, and she said, I can envision myself being shot by the Taliban. Because number one, she knew how dangerous it was in her country. Number two, it was an edict that the Taliban came in, who hate women. I'm sorry, you despise women when you make them prisoners. Don't tell me you love them, because that's not loving. Killing a woman because she won't date you isn't loving her. So therefore, she knew how dangerous it was and that girls are not supposed to be educated. That is a child of light. She may die tomorrow. She may die in 5 years. I hope she lives a long and productive life and advocates for education around the world for all children, especially girls. Every country that's pushed education for children has prospered. There isn't one on the planet that hasn't. So, when you're dying before your time, you usually have more than one death date. And that's when you've had death experiences. I've had a dozen. That's when you've had an almost car accident, an illness, etc. And then you chose to live. You chose to live because you took a tally in the astral world when you stopped breathing with your guardian angel and with the other angels who watch out for you. And they said, you're doing great. You're capable of doing another 10 years. We'll review it in 10 years. And the child comes back to life.
Let's say you almost are hit by a car and you didn't even go into a coma or anything like that, but you knew you had a brush with death.
Yes.
Same thing? And did you
Same
decide
thing.
The night before or
you
months
could have decided
in
the night before that this was going to be a natural death date for you, and to satisfy that karma, you were going to have some type of accident, but that you would survive and you would be fine.
Would you have decided that also in the astral world before you even came to the planet?
Yes, you were told when your natural death dates were going to be. Children who die naturally are never surprised. And often, I used to work with 2 women who started a very important counseling group that work with parents in hospitals who are terminally ill or chronically ill children. And the parents were, what did I do? How did I deserve this? It is not always about you. It is about your child's soul and their mission. So the child would often say to the parents, which blew the doctors and nurses away, Mommy, Daddy, let me go. It's my time. The soul is millions of years old. It's died millions of times. So is your soul. And the children always know.
The soul doesn't die, though.
The soul doesn't die, the costume dies. Because you wear it out. Who wants to be 100 years old? Bless them. Regis Philbin, I saw Regis Philbin, he's 82 years old. He doesn't look a day over 60. He's got the energy of a 15-year-old. He's happily married to his wife, Joy, for 43 years. God bless him. He keeps himself involved, he keeps himself vital, and he's got good genes. So you can have vital, happy, healthy life and lousy genes, and you're going to die. But you know that. Dying is not the end. It's the end of the costume, and it's the beginning of the next costume, the next set of life experiences. So you are hopefully closer to the divine light going home again, which is why we live in a physical body. Is it pleasurable to sweat your tush off in the South? No. Is it pleasurable to get bitten by spiders? No. Is it pleasurable to have dogs bite you, or snakes, or have a rattlesnake come at you, or an alligator, which I've had twice in my own yard? No, I promise you. Is it great to have to get to your front door before the bear sees you, or the bear has already seen you, and you're moseying because you know if you start to run, any predator will be triggered into chasing you, even though it may not want to. I had that situation in Connecticut, and thank God I got to my door before the bear did. So therefore, you know when you're going to cross over. It is not punishment. It's your reward for a job well done. Parents need to say, we had the privilege of having that little soul fulfill its mission, and we're going to move on with our lives because the little soul is moving on with its life. Maybe we'll get it again in another child. Maybe it'll go to other parents. But the important thing is we were given the gift of having that child in our lives. What did we learn? What did the child learn? Thank you, God, for that fabulous experience. It's not easier said than done, because it's true. And parents who survive these situations understand that even subconsciously.
So you're saying it is easier said than done?
It is easier said than done, especially with people who grow up in these religions who tell you that you're going to perish. I heard some nut on the television the other night saying if you don't believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you will perish. You will be one of the millions of souls in hell. That is so wrong. I cannot tell you how evil it is for people to believe that and perpetrate that lie on other individuals. If you're going to be a spiritual teacher, a priest, a monk, a nun, it is your job to tell the truth, not the truth of your religion. It's your job to tell God's truth. And you know what, people? If you just open up your hearts and minds to God's universal truth, you're going to know that God and the angels were always with you. Linda Bennett, and see you next time.